all Alexander teachers are researchers. Why on earth do you think that?
Well, I think all Alexander Technique teachers aren't necessarily researchers, because we are all observing what we do, we're noticing, we're aware, and we're changing our behavior as a result. That's kind of what we do, isn't it? And you think of someone like William James, who was an absolutely amazing, life-changing thinker and researcher. A lot of what he did was sitting on his own in his room, sort of thinking and observing his own movements and his own thought processes. And that's it. You don't need thousands of participants or complicated technology or fancy equipment. You just need a brain and the power to observe, to notice, and to think about that and what it means.
I think you need curiosity as well. I think you need to be curious and interested and wanting to find out.
Yeah, but again, I think that's something that Alexander Technique teachers necessarily have. If they didn't have that curiosity, they would not have invested the sort of time, energy, money, whatever, to train and take on that role.
We see this historically too, how the work has developed and changed. I think it's really drawn people who are fascinated by trying to understand themselves and understand what's going on. It seems to have a particular quality about it which lends itself into this research world.
Yeah, just the way that research can give you ideas about how you apply your knowledge of the technique. So, if somebody's researched a particular aspect, I mean, for me, I guess it's been more of the emotional and the stuff about how it affects us as people, how it affects our emotions, and how we change our thinking, that I've really got into, because that's not my background. My background was more sort of biologist and scientific, but I think it opens your eyes to different ways of looking at things, and then you can go, oh, that's interesting. How do I apply that in my teaching? And how do I apply that to my own use? How do I apply that in my own life? And there's always new bits coming out, aren't there? So you can just sort of keep an eye on stuff and go, oh, that looks a bit boring, or oh, look at that, that's really interesting. I can really run with that.
And then you can start linking it up. One thing leads to another, and then they join up, and then they contradict, and then how do you work that out? And that's all interesting.
It is. And my head is full of things that I like to connect up and go, oh, that links to that. Oh, that's interesting, because that then changes how I think about that. And then my whole brain explodes. But it's kind of, I love to just let those things just cogitate and wander around in my brain until they make sense, which I quite enjoy doing.
So isn't it lovely to get away from the idea of research is a study? It's something you have to do in a very particular way, with lots of parameters that make it good quality or poor quality or whatever. And actually, while there's a place in the world for that, certainly we need that. Where that comes from is something that's much more alive and organic and sort of driven by ideas and a desire to understand, I suppose.
Do you think you can keep that desire, that sort of drive, that initial curiosity while you make that transition to even more complex ways of researching? Maybe not complex, that's maybe not the right word, but the idea of kind of a larger scale research versus smaller.
I think it can be both things. I've been very, very excited by research that I've been involved in. And there were times at the university when I was doing research which perhaps wasn't entirely where I wanted to be spending my time, which was different. Yeah, it had a different kind of life to it, if you know what I mean. And I think, what is driven by your own curiosity tends to be what you find most rewarding, really.
I think there's also something in the process of it. I'd agree it's both. I don't think it's one or the other. And I think within the same research study, you can have moments that are really exciting and lovely. And then, writing the ethics application, it's hard to remain excited and curious. So it's like anything, isn't it? I suppose there's a process. There are bits that you really enjoy and bits that kind of need to be done and are important, but don't set the world on fire.
Yeah.
But it's the underlying, it's the thread that goes through that keeps on pulling you back, however much you think, I'm not doing this again. But somehow you can't quite resist, because there's a little bit of interest there that pulls you in.
the type of research I've done, it's really, really hard work, and you do it for another reason, not for curiosity. You do it because you need it. Okay, we've got some evidence in back pain. Oh, look, here's an opportunity to do a trial in neck pain, and that would be really good for our profession.
Yeah, I know. I think, it isn't all sunny uplands by any means. I think a lot of research is political. One of the things that I've certainly been, in terms of what I've looked at certain times, is strategic. You look at where you might get funding, and then you work out how you can get the funding to do some Alexander research, because that's what you want to do. But how are you going to get some backing for that?
Yeah. It can be political in another way. I've done quite a lot of research, which was, we're getting away from the Alexander technique now, but when I was in an education setting, I was doing things like national evaluations of policy, and then you've got, the government basically wanting to know whether they should carry on funding something. You get a lot of pressure on you from the people who are delivering. It becomes deeply, deeply political, and you're kind of stuck in the middle of there. So, there's all kinds of complications and a lot of research, including medical research.
And then medical research unit, if you're in a team of 20 people, and if you're not the principal investigator, you spend an awful lot of time fighting for what you believe in, and you don't always get what you want.
And we've touched upon the challenges here in some of these larger scale but very important studies. And we've also talked about the importance of one's own disciplined inquiry within their own practice. What are some ways we can bridge these two seemingly disparate worlds?
Erica was saying about using research in practice. That's bridging those worlds. That's pulling together personal observation experience with and putting it together with a wider literature, and research that's useful doesn't have to be Alexander technique research either. It can be research on all sorts of things that aren't Alexander technique that you can draw on.
I think sometimes just looked at and used just as a piece of evidence to prove one's practice and one's value, but it's more than that, I think, and trying to bridge that world between a person's own practice and these really important large-scale studies and the smaller ones, and finding that way to connect is an interesting question.
I agree, it is much more than that, but I also think that is important for something like the Alexander technique that's not very well known, not very well understood, to be able to say, but look, we've got this research evidence for a certain swathe of the population. That's meaningful. That gives credence, and it means I don't think we can be quite so easily dismissed now, because we've got we've got 3 randomized controlled trials that are really pointing in a direction of something's happening with these Alexander lessons that people are having. So I think it's more that we can't be dismissed easily, rather than kind of the reverse of that. But because we're such a niche profession, and we are a declining profession, sadly, in terms of numbers. So I think it's one of the many things we need to be doing, is in order to bolster the way we're seen by the rest of the world and get out there a bit more.
I've been working with people with Parkinson's, and I run a group for people with Parkinson's, and to be able to put forward, to encourage people to come to the group, the research that we've got. These are what the research has shown. How you might benefit from these lessons, what you might get out of it, has been really helpful. Sadly, we don't have that sort of evidence for other conditions, but as again, with people come to you with I've got a back pain or a neck pain, and you go, well, okay, we can actually say this research is here, so it's possible that hopefully we'll be able to help you. If you're interested, you can read the paper. Most people wouldn't be, but I can read the paper, and I've certainly read all the Parkinson's ones and everything I can find on it, so that I can pass on to the people who might come to the class that actually it's going to be hopefully worth your while coming to the class, because we've got this evidence to show that it's a useful intervention.
I once had somebody came for lessons, and when she arrived, she said, "I've tried everything there is. I don't believe in any of this stuff. I think it's all a load of mumbo jumbo, but I'm desperate." And I saw that there was this research study where people had 24 lessons, and it showed a benefit for their back pain. So I'm going to come and I'm going to have 24 lessons with you. But I don't believe in it, but she kind of believed in it enough to come and try it. And she stayed for ages. Her whole quality of life changed, made a huge impact for her. And I thought that's the most powerful example I've encountered of it really, research really making a difference.